The Exclusion Zone, a Norcom Union story by Nicholas K. Part 4. The temptation to pity the man dangling from the roof tries to wriggle its way into my brain. It's stamped out when I venture back onto the catwalk, overlooking a room I can only surmise must have once been a shared crew dormitory or something. Bunks with rusted metal frames and worn-out mattresses line the walls, each with a pair of lockers beside it. The maps, posters, and decorations hung on the walls, and the wide assortment of daily goods scattered around on the beds and near the overturned table in the middle of the room show long use by the scavvers. The ladder leading down from the catwalk rattles in loose fittings as I descend into the room to wrap up this job. Curiosity stops me before I can take more than a step across the room to plant a tracker in the dead scavvers on the floor. How often do you get a chance to check out a once living scaver settlement? This isn't some fucking fly-by-night operation. I don't get it. But these fucks have put some real thought into developing this place into something, whatever the hell it's supposed to be. I stop by one pair of bunks. Names are scrawled onto the bedposts in that old pictographic form of New Common that the scavvers use. I can't read most of the ideograms, but all of the beds are similarly claimed. Corresponding names are painted neatly on the lockers in characters that flow with grace and a sense of pride in each stroke that defies what I just saw up on the roof. It really is astonishing that these things are capable of works of beauty. I flip open the doors to a couple of lockers and glance through the belongings, mostly clothes. A random assortment of garments probably taken from their previous guests, not much worth taking. The scum may just be scavvers, but at least they aren't total fucking animals. I flip open the doors to a couple of lockers and glance through the belongings, mostly clothes. A random assortment of garments that were probably taken from their previous guests, not much worth taking. I shake my head and continue my tour of the room. One filthy scaver lays sprawled out on the ground, legs tangled up in the knocked-over chair he was sitting on. The pool of congealing blood surrounding his head had spread out far enough to consume some of the hand-drawn playing cards scattered around the overturned table during my conversation up on the roof. The rusty odor of putrefying blood assaults my nose, even through the respirator. Can't be from the blood on the floor, though. It's far too fresh to have begun putrefying already. So where the hell is that stink coming from? The blood is slick and sticky, like walking through a pool of used motor oil when I approach him. I stand over him and consider his features. His skull is caved in where the heavy lead slug had struck him, making it hard to make out some of his features clearly. He wasn't very old, late 20s, maybe 30. Might not even be that old. The wastes tend to age a man past his years. His eyes stare, glassy and blank at the ceiling, his mouth frozen open in a twisted grimace. It's a shame these people won't come over to the Union. How much more quickly could the grandfather reclaim the wastes and start to rebuild if we didn't have to fight the wastelanders every step of the way? I remove his clothes and stretch him out in the standard T-pose for an evidence photo to include with my completion report. Like his friend up top, his body is covered in poorly healed scars, most likely left over from attempts to remove cancerous growths. Plague and cancer seem to afflict the scavvers more than regular wastelanders, a professional hazard scavenging the ruins of Jingjinji for tech to recover and trade with caravans from the city. I lift his hands for closer examination. Partially healed radiation burns cover the thick, calloused pads on his fingers. I peel the boots and mismatched socks from his feet. They are glued in place by blood coming from open weeping sores. Parts of the sock tear where it has fused with the skin where sores have opened, healed, and reopened again. The mess obscures it, but a tattoo of a female eye with a rocket ship in place of the iris and pupil is visible. 3 more dead men litter the room. I similarly examine and tag each of them before returning to the first one. All of them share the afflictions of the wastes, weeping, open sores, cancerous growths, radiation burns, and a patchwork of scars. I could almost feel sorry for them if I didn't know what they are and what they'd been doing. Which one of these bunks was yours, little brother? Your boys here give you what you were looking for? You got a mama to weep for you? He continues his empty-eyed stare. I guess it doesn't matter anymore. I dig out the Bay Doe tagger from my bag and inject one into the back of his neck. You just hang tight here, I mutter to the stiffening corpse with a final sneering glance. Rec Ops or PubSec drones will be out to collect you. A faint buzzing pulls my attention away from the scavers toward a set of double doors at the far end of the room. One is propped open, the other swings listlessly in the shifting air. Crashing the scavers' party and then chasing them through the corridors of the derelict sanitation facility hadn't given me much time to look around. Now, with the benefit of a clearer mind and a minute to breathe, the glint of light off of something wet and metallic catches my attention. A row of cages lining the east wall of an adjacent room is visible through the double doors. The cage room is dark, but for the broad column of warm orange light flowing in from the bunk room's solitary incandescent bulb strung up over where the table had been placed. Each cage seems to be occupied. The thick shadows blanket the room where the light from the overhead lamp doesn't reach, making it hard to see what is in the cages. "Hello," I call into the unlit room. "I'm Infrastructure Security Specialist FN528. Under the Grandfather's Harmony, I am a commissioned officer of the Northern Communist Union, and this is the scene of an active investigation." The only response is the wind sighing languidly through the workyard outside, with faint cries for help in the crawling accent of the wastelanders riding it in through open skylights. "Is anyone here?" I call out into the still space. "I'm licensed by the city administrators of the Northern Capital to provide basic medical assistance." The wind gusts, making a chuffing noise like laughter, and a buzzing like the dull roar of distant power tools answers me. I reach into my pocket and produce a torch puck, a small disc about the size of my palm and twice as thick. "Twist the top and bottom halves and squeeze the center of the puck for 5 seconds, I mutter to myself, and toss it into the center of the room. The puck flares to life and glows brighter even than the lamp hanging from the ceiling. It sizzles and pops as whatever the thing is made of combusts. White smoke rises off it in wispy tendrils that curl and crawl toward the ceiling. The wind roiling through the skylights open 10 meters or so overhead whips the smoke and drags it greedily out open windows. The smoke clears and the twisted and mangled limbs of the scavers' guests become visible through the wide doorway. Men, women, old, young. Some are fresh enough to be waiting for their obituary photo. Some are so far gone all that's left is skin as black as pure carbon hanging tattered and loose from slick yellow bones. I rip off my respirator and vomit rockets out onto a nearby wall. It's some sort of black-green jelly that the nutridration packs leave behind in the gut. The stink that my respirator had been mercifully filtering out strikes hard enough to send me to the floor beside my mask. I vomit again. I scramble across the floor closer to a door on the opposite end of the room. Stale air streams in from the other side. I suck in the comparatively clean air and shake my head while pushing myself up and propping the door open. The migraine promised by overuse of the aggression regulator's thunders in time with my racing heart. The air streaming in turns into a river that flows up and out of the open skylights. I open Snapsec and scroll to the active work order and flip through the tabs until the photos and video page is open. A dozen or so recordings of security feeds show a young couple coming out of one of the implant clinics near the inner wall at the eastern edge of NorCap, 20 kilometers or so west and south of my position. The scaver mentioned the girl. "Dreamin' Dornstars with the udders." I'd hoped he meant something else. I glance at the open double doors. The torch puck still spits and sizzles, filling the room with a cold white light. The shadows cast by the cages and their occupants dance and jitter like the souls of the scavers' dead guests playing on the walls. I hit a button and Snapsec begins compiling photogrammetric models of the girl and her companion, and my mind wanders. Why do people buy these augmentations? As gifts? Status symbols? Some of these poor fucks get augmented to assimilate into the ether network, chasing a better life, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Some bitch from the slums or any of the hordes of wasteland refugees I could understand, but why this couple? Is it just the status? They were already connected through the guy's old man. It couldn't be out of devotion to the grandfather or some patriotic desire to grow the ether network. These types are rarely devoted to the state so much as to their own comfort. So, what was the point of the implants? They're not much different from the phones we already have. Sometimes when people touch the void, they hyper-assimilate and die in the cloud. Hardly seems worth the risk just to look good in front of a bunch of vapid socialites. Something mocks me from the pit of my stomach. Hypocrite. Me? For what? The regulators? Hypocrite. I didn't ask for these fucking things. Hypocrite. They hardly even count as augmentations anymore. Hypocrite. They aren't even bionetic, just old-fashioned hormone grinders. Hypocrite. They don't even support these models anymore, not even fucking firmware updates. Hypocrite. Oh, go fuck yourself. The voice quiets down. The aggression regulators still feel warm against the inside of my skull from winding up and down again and again. It'd be kind of relaxing if not for the migraine already setting in. Whatever their reason was for going under the knife, stepping into that clinic was the beginning of the end for them. Oh well, hell of a payout for me. A chime plays and Snapsec spits out a set of full 3D body scans. I flick them about, looking for identifying marks. The girl had a birthmark on her neck that she kept covered up with long hair. The guy had a scar on his chin, not a big one, the kind you get while playing as a kid. I heave a sigh, scoop up my respirator, and set to work. The row of cages glint in the jittering light of the torch puck. A set of handcarts are stashed nearby. Curious stains adorn the bed of each. Markings on the floor lead from each cage to a table set further back in a corner. There are windows propped open high overhead near the ceiling. Even these fucks must have thought the reek was too much. The droning buzz of the flies, though diminished by the rush of wind that had blown through the rooms when I opened the hallway door, becomes deafening as I empty the contents of the cages one by one onto the floor. Close to an hour passes. My gloves are slick with bodily fluids. They're water-resistant and bound tightly around my wrists with duct tape, and I thank the grandfather for granting me the foresight to have invested my limited and dwindling so-cred in both. More bodies than I have fingers to count, and parts of several more, lay sprawled out on the floor in various states of decay. The noxious gases try to penetrate my respirator. It's not an unfamiliar smell, but not the kind of thing you look for in an air freshener. The stink would make any average person faint and maybe even drown in a pool of last night's dinner. I take aim with my wrist rocket and break the remaining unopened windows. The wind rushing through the abandoned facility rises with each broken window, drawing out the odor and many of the flies into the open, roiling air outside. Already the stink lessens, and I can breathe more easily. Some of the bodies are too disfigured by rot to identify. The skin sloughs off one guy's, at least I think it's a man, torso when I try to turn him over to take pictures for my infrastructure security agent portal on Snapsec, and I dry heave inside my visor. My gloves shine wetly in the dull light of the single overhead bulb illuminating the area, and I sigh, resigned to the fact that my hands are going to smell like rancid meat pies for the next week. At least he didn't explode with maggots and flies like that one guy last summer. Grandfather save me, I hope I never have to deal with another job like that one again. I shudder and wipe my gloves off on a pair of discarded jeans piled up nearby before returning to my work. I should be disturbed by all of this, I mean viscerally, I am. It's thoroughly revolting. But it seems to me that I ought to have more of a reaction than just tossing some jelly. Seeing these people, abducted from their families, raped, tortured, mutilated, and now laid out in a growing number of neat rows in the middle of an irradiated, disease-infested wasteland, should bring me nearly to tears, if not straight up drive me catatonic with shock and horror. But I feel nothing but hatred for the wasteland filth who perpetrate these crimes. All I can do is accept that these things are going to live in my mind for the rest of my life. Grandfather save me, but I hope they can be persuaded to do a personality rewrite when they finally decommission me. I search myself for the feelings that any natural human would feel after being subjected to this grisly work. Nothing comes back, nothing but annoyance at the monotony of it all. Almost nothing. There is the regret that I allow myself to feel from time to time that these people will never see their homes again. I guess that's something. Desensitization. It's gotta be. Day after day. Week after bloody fucking week. Snapsec puts out the work orders. I pick them up before any other on-duty units do. Spend a day or a week walking, fighting, and crypt-crawling till I get to my destination, come back, go through a few days of quarantine and decontamination, and then do it all over again. When it's scouting for PubSec, then sure, yeah, fine. Get high on whatever wasteland chems I can scrounge up after exiting the wall, put on some music, and just try not to encounter anyone for a few days. Sometimes it works out, and I get to take a little stroll, take some pics, or shoot drone footage, then fuck off back home. But these search and identify missions, InfoSec isn't meant for this shit. We were made to crawl the wastes and sniff out where these fucking scavvers infest the Union's lands so PubSec can harmonize them and ready the place for rec ops to come in and civilize the place. All these jobs ever amount to are piles of rotting meat, sometimes with little bits of shiny and expensive tech jammed inside. Let fucking Medicorp handle this body-sorting shit instead of staying locked up in their labs clean and well-fed. Then maybe they'd be motivated to whip us up some better drugs or figure out a cure for the plagues coming in from the wastes. At least they pay well. I try to recall what it was like before the fall. Everything surrounding those memories is mist and shadow. Fragments of memories break through the conditioning and burst into my conscious mind. Memory strikes. They're like images in the afterglow of lightning strikes in a midnight storm, giving only the briefest glimpse of the past, and then they're obfuscated once again by synthetic memory regulating hormones and decades of psychoneurological conditioning. A worried chime, long, low, and wailing, breaks my contemplation and pulls me back into the present. Low power warning, 20%. I dismiss the message with a wave of the hand and blink away the sense of wrongness that started my musings as I pace the line of dead citizens, scanning them for signs of the couple on the work order. And there they are. Their faces are bloated and bruised, eyes frozen open, watching, judging, pleading. That feeling of someone looking over my shoulder shoves needles between the vertebrae in my neck, and I shudder. I stand and wheel around, expecting to see a previously unseen member of the scaver crew looming behind me. But no one is there. Nothing but the barracks and cramped hallways leading to fuck knows where, and my old pals, the scavvers, keeping my seat at the card table for me. That and the multitude of dead eyes full of resentment, pain, and fear. Grandfather, save me. Please let them do a personality rewrite when they finally let me go. Shaking off that feeling, I turn around and pull the hair back on the girl to see the birthmark in the file images, then the scar on the man's chin. Finally, I tag the pair with Beidou trackers, upload evidence photos to the SnapSec job sheet beside the images of the scavvers, and submit my completion report. A loading spinner turns on in my visor HUD before the assignment status switches from a cool blue in progress bar to a happy green in review 1. I switch over to the supervisor tab and shoot off a message to Supervisor Chen. Send biohazard drones out. This is going to be a messy pickup. A blue thumbs up appears beside the message. He follows that up with a voice message. His voice is calm and crisp, but there's a hint of excitement in it. PubSec drones will be around to collect them for return to whoever paid for the S&I contract. Mission Buddy correlated this site with another open investigation. He'll send you a new job notification when this one's approved. Watch out for it. Big payout on this one. I send an OK emoji and switch over to the Assignments tab. As soon as the message is sent, a chime plays in my visor. A text message appears on my visor. New investigation generated in your immediate vicinity appears at the top of my HUD, then fades away and is replaced by another. SnapSec Mission Buddy has processed the details of your report. Based on the information provided, a related investigation has been generated for the suspects in your case file. The notification reads. I hit the Details tab and flip through the summary. As I do, SnapSec Mission Buddy speaks to me through the bone conduction speakers pressed against my skull behind my ears. It speaks in a halting cadence, neither male nor female, but low, mechanical, and rumbling. It pauses after each word like someone forgot to teach it what punctuation is.
Abduction of female, conditional citizen, traumatic injury, and imminent death, distress, beacon, recorded in your vicinity by PubSec PSD 5231, patrol and signal detection, swarm, approximately 7 hours ago, infrastructure security, specialist FN 528 is advised to variants of PubSec Type 37, Mark II, Recon and Mark III assault drones have been destroyed or are unaccounted for after contact with suspects. human security intervention is required. Suspects may have acquired Type 37 Mark III automatic, medium caliber, armaments. Extreme probability exists of close contact with armed and uninoculated non-citizens. All contacts must be considered infectious and extremely dangerous. 150 SOCRID, paid upon completion.
My hand spasms and my mouth hangs open. 150 SOCRID for a girl and some fucking tech scavvers? Mission buddy speaks again.
Move to the designated area. Scout area and conduct. Threat assessment. Report. Location data and intel. To PubSec. Await and assist PubSec intervention.
Then the Intel tab slides into view. A photo gallery tops the page. Images of the suspected perpetrators. A 5-man crew. All but one have that fucking stripe pattern on their arms. I raise an eyebrow and glance at the dead men sprawled out on the floor. Several audio samples play, each a distinct voice. When SnapSec doesn't have enough visual data to make a good reconstruction, it guesses based on a composite of different sources and descriptions. As each sample plays, a picture glows to life, indicating the voice belongs to one or another of the scavvers. First, it highlights an image of a man in his late 20s. He has a face like a painting of the moon stretched too tightly over a shoddily built frame, all pockmarked skin, bony angles, and deep impact craters for eyes. It parses through the audio samples and cycles through ideographic character combinations until it comes up with a new common equivalent of Zhang Jun. Next is a man strikingly similar in appearance to Zhang Jun, but more fleshy and with fewer years etched into his features. Unlike the others in the file, this guy doesn't have stripes on his sleeves. No known aliases exist for him, but I'd be willing to bet this entire payout that he and this Zhang Jun fuck are close relatives. The next sample is strange. My ears are assaulted by wastelandish so fucking deep I can hardly keep my head above it. The voice isn't quite human, though. It's all pops and hisses with an electrical buzz behind every sound. A synth by the sound of it. Sounds a little like Mission Buddy, but with a more natural cadence to his speech. One of the images confirms my suspicion. A long puckered scar runs around the man's neck with a rectangular box inside the throat where his Adam's apple should be. Wasteland necktie patched up with a cheap Vox box? Only known aliases are ideographic variants on the phoneme Lee. SnapSec likes this Lee guy. His voice shows up more than the rest. He sounds like a stereo got throat fucked with a soldering iron at the repair depot. His face is a pixelated mess. It's hard to make out clearly, but a deep grimace is frozen in place. Might be some sort of injury that didn't heal right, dragging the left half of his face down. My eyes keep going back to the thick, ugly scar that runs the entire circumference of his neck. It's like someone tried to cut his head off with a wire knife or something and failed. Wonder what happened to the other guy. When he speaks, he opens his mouth, but his lips don't move. Just that inhuman, synthetic voice. It sounds like voices coming over a comm set just at the edge of a radio range and with the squelch turned up too high. I never liked talking to synths. After a while, they begin to forget how to speak with the parts they were born with. They make the slightest lip motions to try and mimic normal speech, but I think they just kind of forget how to do it after a while. I guess they think it's easier for other people to accept if they see the lips moving, but it's eerie and disquieting to watch. I tap the victim intel tab and soak up the details. Name, Kong Bing, female, late teens, big crooked smile tending a little to her left. Round wireframe glasses, long dark hair, large eyes sharp in the corners but soft and full of happiness. Bright red and gold background. Timestamp is from last September. Class photo by the looks of it. Then there are photos taken from security footage. Some are stills from the girls' school, surrounded by a group of friends sitting at a table. Each of the girls is dressed in the loose-fitting tracksuits typical of NORCAP high schools. Another photo is of her passing through the security checkpoint, leaving the high-walled school compound of number 822 Normal High School. There are a few angles of her standing at an intersection, some photos of her in restaurants, elevators, and shops, all times stamped for a few weeks ago. In all of the pictures, she has her face glued to her phone, typical of a girl her age and very obviously not an implant. The last file in the slideshow turns out to be a video. The girl meanders listlessly alone down an alleyway and passes by a low-angled camera. Probably from a vending machine or something. The left sleeve of her school jacket is pushed up. A rectangle of light glows on the back of her arm. Her right hand is raised to the sky as if to touch something. Glittery purple polish adorns her fingernails. She passes out of frame and there's nothing after that. No indication she'd ever stepped foot outside the alley. The video cuts to other camera feeds from all the exits she could have taken to leave the alley, all with similar timestamps. She is absent from them all. A feeling flits through me as I pore over the details. Another memory strike. It leaves behind the faint silhouette of someone with long hair, then another but smaller. It brings with it a fleeting sensation that I can't really identify. It's like a hand reaching into my chest and grasping my heart, filling it with a brief moment of intense longing, then crushing it like a tomato. Then the hormone grinders hiss and the memory winks out. All that's left is the residue of vague and unexplainable emotions. My face turns hot. Tension that I hadn't even been aware of knotted up in my forehead lets go. My eyebrows turn into the slopes of a small mountain. My nostrils flare. How the hell did someone like you get mixed up in whatever the fuck is going on out here? I wonder aloud. A scarcely noticed but ever-present squint in my eyes softens. Then I focus my attention on a sliver of bluish-white light peeking out from behind the cuff of her pushed-up left sleeve. My lip curls up and my teeth grind. Another implant. What is it with these grandfather-fucked implants? Up until this moment, I hadn't been sure if I wanted this job or not. My power bank is running low and I'm all but out of water. I haven't eaten anything but vitamin candies and protein bars in days. But hatred of these wastelanders and a morbid curiosity take over. And now the desire to learn what I can about whatever's going on with these implants. Blink. The accept button flickers and disappears. Mission Buddy speaks to me in its inhuman voice, calling to mind the clips of Lee, and reinforcing my desire to find these scavvers and pry out of them everything I can about what's happening out here.
Update received. Ministry of Public Security, Division of Human Exploration and Wasteland Reclamation. Infrastructure Security Specialist FN528 is authorized for entry into Exclusion Zone, Sector 17, East Dam Subdistrict. 24-hour travel pass extension. Authorized. Use of deadly force. Authorized. Permission to detain. Authorized. Area permissions may take up to an hour to be received by autonomous surveillance and combat assets. Good luck.
I cast a final glance first down at the dead, bloated couple, then to the scavvers laid out flat beside the card table, and turned to make my way back out into the wasteland. The eyes of the dead follow me as I leave. All right, back to business.